You're watching DD India Global. We'll get you top stories from India and the region. I am Tanvi Taneja, and for news from the rest of the world, I'm joined by my colleague in London, Ollie Barrett. Good afternoon, Ollie.
It's 12:30 p.m. here in London, 1:30 p.m. across Central Europe. Coming up in the next half an hour, fears of escalation in the Middle East, energy facilities targeted in the Russia-Ukraine conflict, and the UK announces a change of top diplomat in India. First, Tanvi, you've got the headlines.
West Asia on alert for potential threats from Iran. The US vows ironclad support to Israel. American envoy calls on foreign ministers of Arab countries to mediate with Iran. Russia says it inflicts massive strikes on oil, gas sites in Ukraine. The IAEA board holds emergency meeting on Zaporozhye attacks in Vienna later today. And India celebrates EidFitr, marking the end of the fasting month of Ramadan. President, Vice President and Prime Minister extend Eid greetings. Our first news from West Asia. German airline Lufthansa on Thursday extended the suspension of its flights to Tehran due to the situation in the Middle East, which is on alert for Iranian retaliation for a suspected Israeli airstrike on Iran's embassy in Syria. An Iranian news agency briefly stoked tensions further when it published an Arabic report on social media platform X saying all airspace over Tehran had been closed for military drills. The agency then removed the report and denied it had issued any such news. Lufthansa said that it suspended flights to and from Tehran from April 6th until probably April 11th. There was no immediate word from other international airlines that fly to Tehran. Iran's supreme leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei said that Israel must be punished for the Damascus strike that killed 7 Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps members. In an apparent response to Khamenei, Israeli Foreign Minister Israel Katz said that Israel will mount countermeasures if Iran attacks Israel from its own soil. United States President Joe Biden extended an ironclad commitment to Israel against any Iranian potential attack. The development comes in the wake of reports suggesting rising concerns of Tehran conducting strikes in the coming few days in response to the blast that Israel conducted at the Iranian consular building in Damascus. The statement came while Biden spoke about the same in a joint press conference with Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida yesterday.
We also want to address the Iranian threat they're threatening to launch a significant attack on Israel. As I told Prime Minister Netanyahu, our commitment to Israel's security against these threats from Iran and its proxies is ironclad. Let me say it again, ironclad. We're going to do all we can to protect Israel's security.
Meanwhile, Hamas Chief Ismail Haniyeh insisted that the death of 3 of his sons in an Israeli airstrike would not influence truce talks in Gaza as operations on Thursday rocked the Palestinian territory. Israel confirmed the killings, which came as talks in Cairo for a temporary ceasefire and hostage release deal drag on without signs of a breakthrough. Israeli military described the 3 sons as operatives in the Hamas. Speaking to a Qatari-based broadcaster, Haniyeh suggested that the strike, which also killed 4 of his grandchildren, was an attempt to shift Hamas's negotiating stance. Haniyeh is based in Qatar and is the face of Hamas's international diplomacy. His family home was destroyed in an Israeli airstrike in November. DD India's Alex Cadier has more from Tel Aviv.
Well, that's what we seem to hear from US intelligence sources. It's what we've been warning about for days, if not weeks, or at least certainly since that strike against the Iranian consulate in Damascus. Certainly that is a big concern. Intelligence sources US intelligence sources telling Bloomberg that there is an imminent risk of that strike, be it through a ballistic missile, be it through swarms of explosive drones. That's one of the other avenues we've heard the Iranians may use. So there is certainly a concern. It is front of mind for people here across Israel. Escalation both with Iran directly, but also with its proxies in the north. We've heard the leader of Hezbollah repeatedly saying that a strike would come. It's not a question of if it comes, it's a question of when and how, and that how is crucial because the Israelis have said very clearly that if Iran strikes Israel directly, it will respond in kind by striking Iran, I should say, from Israel directly as well. We understand from those intelligence sources speaking to Bloomberg that we expect Iran to target either military or government institutions in Israel or around the region, but we don't know exactly when, we don't know exactly what, we don't know exactly how, and that certainly creates a climate of fear and anticipation to see what that retaliation may be.
Now, amid all this, US diplomat Brett McGurk had called on the foreign ministers of Arab countries to deliver a message to Iran, urging it to lower tensions with Israel. Iran's foreign ministry said on Wednesday that the foreign ministers of Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, Qatar and Iraq spoke on phone with Iran's foreign minister and discussed regional tensions. Trucks carrying humanitarian aid entered Gaza, meanwhile, through the Rafah crossing on Thursday. Israel said aid is moving into Gaza faster after international pressure, but is still not enough to meet the urgent humanitarian needs in the enclave. 10 tons of aid was dropped by the French military in coordination with the Jordanian government over Gaza on Thursday, consisting of food and basic necessities. In an open letter published in the French newspaper Le Monde, French President Emmanuel Macron, Egyptian President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi and Jordanian King Abdullah again called for an immediate ceasefire and release of all hostages. So Russia's foreign ministry has strongly recommended its citizens to refrain from traveling to the Middle East, especially to Israel, Lebanon and the Palestinian territories, except in cases of extreme necessity. The foreign ministry said that the tense situation in the Middle East region is persistent, though security situation in Jordan remains stable. And staying with Russia, Moscow also said on Thursday that it hit major energy facilities in Ukraine. My colleague Ollie Barrett joins us now from London. He takes it forward from me here and gives us also on other stories making headlines around the world. Ollie, over to you.
Thank you very much indeed, Tanvi. And yes, as you say, when it comes to Russia, we have seen those Ukrainian energy infrastructure sites again being the target. The latest strikes damaging substations and power facilities in 5 regions and causing emergency power cuts for at least 200,000 people. The latest attack used 82 missiles and drones. Ukraine's air defences took down 18 of the incoming missiles and 39 drones. 2 Ukraine underground gas storage facilities were also targeted. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is visiting Lithuania's capital Vilnius on Thursday. Ukrainian stocks of air defences and artillery have dwindled as assistance from the West has slowed and a major US aid package has been blocked by Republicans in Congress. Now, the International Atomic Energy Agency's Board of Governors is holding an emergency meeting in Vienna on Thursday at the request of both Ukraine and Russia to discuss attacks on the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. The IAEA says drones struck the Russian-held facility in southern Ukraine on Sunday, hitting one reactor building. It has not ascribed blame, but has demanded that such attacks stop. Russia says Ukraine attacked the plant with drones for a third day. Kiev says it had nothing to do with any such attacks and has claimed that any incidents were staged by Moscow. And we can go live now to DD India's Dasha Chernyshova, who joins me live now from Moscow. Dasha, what does Russia hope for out of that emergency IAEA meeting?
Well, as we hear the Russian officials, they insist they want the fair assessment of the situation around the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. Just to keep you, just to remind you, Moscow insists it is Ukraine that is attacking this nuclear power plant, and that's why Moscow wants the IAEA as well as the international community to put pressure on Ukraine to stop what it describes as nuclear terrorism. The Russian foreign minister said that it's not just the situation around the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, but in general around Ukraine, in which the Western officials have been taking the one side angle and have not been commenting on the other side of the events, meaning by that the Russian position has always been neglected from the position of the Russian officials. So Moscow does want the international community to press on Ukraine. We've heard the Russian representative with the international organizations in Vienna, Mikhail Ulyanov, saying that Ukraine has made it its daily routine to attack the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, and Moscow keeps insisting that the presence of its military at the site of the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant is the guarantee of the security in Europe.
Okay, Dasha, well, tell us more about Russia's latest strikes on Ukraine.
Well, we've heard the confirmation from the Russian Ministry of Defense that in response to the Ukrainian attempt to target the Russian energy and oil refineries, all these sectors, Moscow has launched the massive strikes against the Ukrainian energy sector. And Moscow insists that it is targeting only the areas that are for the military, saying that the strikes that Moscow carried out have managed to disrupt the work of the military complexes, the military enterprises that have been producing and repairing arms. Moscow also says it is hitting the warehouses where the Western ammunition is stored and the places of the deployment of the Ukrainian military. Having said that, we are also hearing more from the Kremlin when it comes to the possibility of negotiations with Ukraine, now commenting on the idea of holding a summit on Ukraine in Switzerland. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov said that Moscow has never shut the door towards the negotiations, saying that Ukraine, on the contrary, has ruled out the possibility of having any sort of talks. But Moscow is very skeptical about those upcoming talks in Switzerland, saying that any negotiations without Russia's participation will be meaningless, but also saying that the Istanbul arrangements that have already been put on paper are now losing their ground as well, because the geopolitical situation has changed.
Dasha, thank you. Ukraine and Latvia have signed a 10-year agreement envisaging annual Latvian military support for Ukraine at 0.25% of its GDP. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky arrived in Lithuania's capital Vilnius to also attend a conference and meet with the leaders of several other European countries. Leaders from a dozen states in Central Europe, including Poland, the Czech Republic and Romania, are attending the so-called Three Seas Summit in Vilnius, with the war in Ukraine prominent on the agenda. Meanwhile, Ukraine's parliament has passed a bill to overhaul the rules governing how the military mobilizes civilians into its ranks. The legislation is seen as crucial for Ukraine to address what military analysts say are major manpower problems as it fights a better armed and larger enemy. The bill was passed in its final reading with a majority of 283 votes after months of deliberations. And as we were hearing from Dasha in Moscow, the Swiss government says it will host a two-day high-level conference in June aimed at achieving peace in Ukraine. The conference is set to be held on June the 15th and 16th at the Bergenstock resort in the canton of Nidwalden, outside the city of Lucerne. It will aim to create a framework favourable to a comprehensive and lasting peace in Ukraine. Russia says it won't take part. Switzerland held talks with the EU, G7 member states and other countries to gauge their interest in taking part in the summit. Floods continue to engulf cities and towns across Russia and Kazakhstan after Europe's third longest river burst its banks. The water level has been continuing to rise in flood zones, while large amounts of water are coming to new regions as well. The Kremlin says the weather forecast is unfavourable. Over 110,000 people have been evacuated so far from affected regions. Upstream on the Ural, which flows into Kazakhstan, floodwaters burst through an embankment dam in the city of Orsk. European lawmakers have approved a revised immigration system in an effort to thwart gains made by the far right ahead of the bloc's legislative elections in June. Reducing illegal immigration from the Middle East and Africa is a top concern for the bloc's member states, and the goal is to shorten time that it takes for security and asylum procedures at external EU borders, while also increasing returns. However, far-right, anti-immigration and Eurosceptic parties have attacked it for not going far enough to lower migration. Human rights advocates and some parties on the left of the political spectrum have denounced it as a setback.
The European Parliament has just voted in favour of a new way forward on asylum and migration. We have listened, we have acted, and we have delivered on one of the main concerns of people across Europe. This is a historic day for Europe. I want to thank members of the European Parliament who have spent years working on this.
Campaigners are demanding higher taxes for the ultra-wealthy, saying it could raise up to $286 billion for the European Union's most vulnerable. Protesters say they'll land a private jet in front of the European Parliament in protest. It may be a marketing gimmick for a bigger cause, though, as McGurk reports from Brussels.
Campaigners will gather outside the European Parliament building in Brussels demanding a 2 to 5% progressive tax on the ultra-rich. They say it could pay for up to 40% of the EU's post-pandemic recovery fund. Global NGO Oxfam says the EU's 5 richest billionaires have boosted their wealth by 76% since 2020. They claim 99% of the European population has become relatively poorer in the same time period. A study commissioned by the EU's executive arm has found that a progressive wealth tax on the bloc's richest 0.5% could generate more than $200 billion every year. NGOs including Oxfam, Avaz and We Move Europe are organizing Thursday's protest. They claim they will land a jet in Luxembourg Square in the heart of the Belgian capital, in the middle of the narrow cobbled streets leading up to the European Parliament building. Now, this stunt, which is unlikely to happen in practice, is supposed to be a commentary on how the ultra-wealthy are hurting the environment by flying in private planes. The campaigners are hoping to raise awareness about climate change and will lobby European lawmakers to bring in laws to tax big individual polluters. Organizers say the ultra-wealthy and their companies paying far too little tax is at the core of many of Europe's problems. During this protest, they will demand more measures to address billionaires allegedly using shell companies to evade taxes. They say urgent action by authorities is required to reduce the wealth gap between the bloc's richest and poorest. McGurk in Brussels, reporting for DD India.
The UK has appointed Lindy Cameron as its new High Commissioner to India. The UK High Commission in India's capital, New Delhi, said that Lindy Cameron would take up her appointment this month. Cameron will succeed the incumbent Alex Ellis in the post. Cameron has been serving as the Chief Executive of the UK's National Cyber Security Centre since 2020. Her appointment comes as the UK and India are engaged in negotiations on a long-pending free trade agreement. And from your envoy in London, Tanvi, back to you.
Thank you very much, Ollie. Ollie Barrett joining us from London. You're watching DD India Global, still to come on the show. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un says now is the time to be ready for war, inspects the country's top military university. And the Asian Development Bank raises India's GDP growth forecast for the current fiscal to 7%, investment and consumer demand to drive the robust growth.
As India decides in the the world's largest election.
We help you feel the pulse of the nation.
I am Sakal Bhatt.
I am Shubhendu Ghosh.
This election season, join us on a journey of India.
Discover the colors of democracy. Watch Poll Pulse on DD India.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India Global. I am Tanvi Taneja. Back to Asia. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un has said that unstable geopolitical situations surrounding his country mean now is the time to be more prepared for war than ever, as he inspected the country's main military university. Kim gave field guidance on Wednesday at Kim Jong-un Second University of Military Politics and met with university staff and students there. North Korea has stepped up weapons development in recent years under the reign of Kim and has forged closer military and political ties with Russia, allegedly aiding Moscow in its war with Ukraine in return for help with strategic military projects. A Vietnamese court handed the death sentence to real estate tycoon Truong Mai Lan for her role in a $12.5 billion financial fraud on Thursday. The chairwoman of real estate developer Wan Thing Path Holdings Group was found guilty of embezzlement, bribery and violations of banking rules at the end of a trial that began on 5th of March in the business hub of Ho Chi Minh City. The trial comes as part of a campaign against graft that the leader of the ruling Communist Party, Nguyen Phu Trong, has pledged for years to stamp out. The Asian Development Bank has raised India's GDP growth forecast for the financial year 2024-25 to 7% from its previous projection of 6.7% in December last year. According to the Asian Development Bank's April edition of the ADB Outlook 2024 report released on Thursday, the robust growth will be driven by strong public and private sector investment, strong services sector and improved consumer demand. The ADB said that the Indian economy grew remarkably in 2022-23 fiscal with strong momentum in manufacturing and services. The ADB's growth forecast for fiscal year 2025 is in line with the projections made by the Reserve Bank of India, which had projected a 7% GDP growth rate in the current fiscal year. And now let's get you up to speed with the latest buzz from the ongoing democratic elections in India. So election season is at its peak in India, with parties organising multiple public meetings as the first phase of voting is slated for the 19th of this month. In a bid to bolster support for the ruling Bharatiya Janata Party, Prime Minister Narendra Modi addressed an election rally in Karoli city of North Indian state of Rajasthan. Earlier in the day, Prime Minister Modi held a public rally in the city of Rishikesh in the Indian northern state of Uttarakhand. During his speech, Prime Minister Modi criticised the Congress party, accusing it of misappropriating funds intended for the welfare of the poor and the youth. The opposition parties are also going all out to woo the voters. Congress leader Rahul Gandhi visited Rajasthan today. He held public rallies in Bikaner to garner support for the party candidates. Later in the evening, Rahul Gandhi will be visiting Jodhpur city and will hold a public meeting there. Meanwhile, Congress leaders K.C. Venugopal and Ramesh Chennithala held election campaign in Alappuzha city in the South Indian state of Kerala. Congress General Secretary K.C. Venugopal will contest the 2024 elections from the Alappuzha Lok Sabha constituency. So after the Indian election buzz, let's take a look at what else is happening around the world. Russia test launched its Angara A5 rocket from the Vostochny Cosmodrome on Thursday. Technical glitches had previously prompted officials to abort missions for 2 days in a row. The launch of Angara is intended to showcase Russia's post-Soviet space ambitions and the growing significance of Vostochny spaceport located in the forests of the Amur region of Russia's far east. 37 migrants were rescued by the Italian Coast Guard from a boat travelling on rough seas off the southeastern coast of Lampedusa Island. The migrants were later transferred safely to the Italian island. French artist Baptiste Chibassier's artwork honours all 30,249 medalists in modern Olympics' 128-year history. The 27-year-old uses a marker pen and writes the names on a rolling piece of paper that could run about 120 meters long. So his list starts from the first modern games, which was the 1896 Athens Olympics. Muslims across India and the world celebrate EidFitr and mark this festival marking the end of the month-long fasting on Thursday. One of the biggest occasions in the Islamic calendar, EidFitr marks the breaking of the fast at the end of the holy month of Ramadan, during which Muslims fast daily before dawn until sunset. The occasion is a time for spiritual reflection. Devotees offered prayers at the break of dawn and marked the celebration with family visits and feasts featuring a spread of traditional delicacies. Many leaders, including India's President Draupadi Murmu, Vice President Jagdeep Dhankar and Prime Minister Narendra Modi, extended their greetings on the auspicious occasion of EidFitr. Bohag Bihu, also known as Rangali Bihu, is a festival celebrated in India's northeastern state of Assam. It marks the beginning of the Assamese calendar and coincides with the middle of April, that is on the 13th and 14th. The festival is characterized by vibrant cultural celebrations, including traditional dances like the Bihu dance that you're seeing on your screen right now, and the melodious music on various instruments. So that's the vibrant culture of our country, India. That's it in this edition of DD India Global. Do let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. Connect with us on Facebook, X, formerly Twitter and Instagram. You can also find us online at ddindia.co.in. We will be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Tanvi Taneja from my entire team in New Delhi and elsewhere across the world. Thanks for watching. Namaskar.